Hello everyone, my name is John Bussard. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. I help support HPE servers, blade systems, as well as Aruba networking technology solutions. In my videos, what I like to do is show you a slide from a popular PowerPoint and then demonstrate to you what that means within a management context. Today we're going to continue on our discussion with HPE's dHCI solution, which is a hyper-converged solution. Just the D stands for disaggregated hyper-converged. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. So within normal hyper-converged solutions, you'll have a software-defined storage component. And basically what that means, across multiple systems, you take local storage and aggregate it together as a single entity in a redundant fashion and place it back to your virtualized environment as shared storage. Right, so that certainly can be the weakest link within your hyper-converged platform. And the way dHCI goes after that is what they have is a disaggregated hyper-converged solution or storage solution in this environment. So you're actually getting a Nimble storage solution with this technology. But you still don't lose any of the value add associated with hyper-converged. So it's still simple and easy to manage, all within a vCenter context. Simple to support, so HPE supports the whole stack of equipment in this environment. And then what we're going to be exploring today is the simple to deploy as well as simple to scale portion of this. So as you'd expect with any hyper-converged platform, once you get racked and stacked, you should have this deployed in less than an hour, right? As well as expanded in less than an hour. So a quick process for doing that within your environment. So we're going to go through the deployment process today as well as the expansion process. One thing I do want to note, I'm doing something a little bit different. So my demonstrations are always off live equipment that I have within the Business Transformation Center. And this is going to be a live demonstration that I'm going to give to you today. The difference is the dHCI storage component is wrapped up in a virtual machine. So they take the code from a storage array and they wrap it up in the virtual machine. And I'm going to deploy this as a part of this process. But I wouldn't be showing you this if it wasn't exactly the same as what I've seen deployed within a normal dHCI environment. So this is going to look exactly the same. There's not going to be any differences. As a matter of fact, part of this process is going to look exactly the same as deploying a Nimble solution. So this is going to be a good primer if you're deploying a Nimble storage solution or you're deploying the dHCI solution. And I'll tell you where the process kind of switches on over to the dHCI solution as we go through this. So with all that being said, let's explore this deployment process. Okay, here's our Windows environment here. So we have to set up an initial IP address on the Nimble storage system, and there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can do that one way through a GUI, and I've got the Nimble Setup Manager here, and you can get this as a part of the Nimble Windows Toolkit. If you install that on a PC, you'll get this utility. You have to be on the same subnet as the storage system. If you're not, or you can't get on the same subnet as storage system, you can do this through a serial console. There is a cable that comes with the storage system, and you can log in and run the setup process. So you'd actually type that in at the command line to be able to launch what we're doing. But what we're trying to do here is just get the initial IP address on the array, and then after that, it's kind of handed over to a web process. So let me open up the Nimble Setup Manager. And you can see that we've discovered our array, and as I had mentioned, it is virtual. But we'll select that. I'm going to click Next. And it's going to put a funky IP address on this and then open up a web browser. All right, and here we have the terms and condition. You notice we got some spots that are grayed out as a part of this process. So what we need to do is read this in excruciating detail all the way down to the bottom. All right, and after we get down to the bottom, you'll see that this will light up. And I'll put the check mark in the box, and then we're allowed to proceed. At this point, this is really the stage within the setup where we can join an existing group. And basically what a group is a grouping together of Nimble head arrays in an environment as a single entity. This will be the first system that we're deploying, so it'll be in its own group. So we're just going to click Next here. And next we need to give it an array name. I'm going to choose this VA1. I need to give the group a name. We're going to call it Group 1. And then we need a management IP address. We're going to choose this one. The 180 will be our management network. And then obviously a subnet. It's going to want a default gateway. And then what the domain name is going to be. And then we need to put a password in. So let's type that. I'll do something simple just for this. And then I'm going to click Finish. So this would be the process for setting up the initial IP address on the array. Again, you can run through this through a setup command at the CLI if you want to go through a serial cable. Another thing I'm going to note, this is a quick and easy process to go through all of this, but I like to keep the videos short, so you know, I'm gonna cut out some of the dead space within this. If you want to get an accurate representation of time, what I would look at is down here, but just keep that in mind as we go through this. All right, we can see our array was successfully initialized, so we're going to click Continue. And you notice it's going to open up the IP address that we assigned to the storage array, and then we're going to log in with the credentials that we gave it in the previous process. This is the default warning that kind of comes up. This is customizable by you as a consumer. We're going to click OK, and now we're going through the actual setup of the array. Now you can set up 2 management addresses on this if you want to. I'm not going to do that in this process, but it's certainly something you could do if you were looking for that type of redundancy. We do need 2 iSCSI subnets, and to keep things simple, we're just going to make this. And they do have to be on 2 separate subnets, so we're going to do 81 as well as 82, and you should be doing that as a part of best practice. Obviously, we need a mask. So we'll place that down. And then we need an IP address on these. So I'm just going to do a 20 across the board. All right, and then we will click Next. Now we have to assign some these networks to interfaces. Now in a traditional dHCI install, these will be 10 gig Ethernet interfaces, but in this case these are all 1 gig. So we're just going to go through and we're going to select the interfaces. So we'll do subnet 1 on these 2, and then I'll do subnet 2, the second iSCSI subnet down here. And again, we'll put IP addresses on this. So I'm going to do we'll do 21, 22, we'll do 21, 22, 21. Oops, looks like I forgot to set this guy, so let's set that, and then we'll do 22 down here. All right, and then again, just following that same thought process, we'll do 23 and 24 because we have to have IP addresses on the controllers as well. All right, so we're going to click Next. All right, we've got a domain name up here. We need our DNS server. This is my Active Directory server. So I'm going to use this for time as well, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to click Next. And up here we need a time server, so again my Active Directory server is our time server. And I'm in New York, so let's scroll down a little bit. See if we can find New York. There it is. And then we'll click Next. All right, now I need to give an email server for alerts. I've got this internal test server that I use, so I'm going to do that. We're not using a proxy server, so I'm going to click Finish. And now it's going to go through the process of actually installing this array. All right, we can see the setup has completed, and we're going to click Continue. Notice it brings up the IP address of the system again, and then we're going to log in. I'll accept it, and I'll actually log us in at this point. So it's going to settle down a little bit, but you know, at this point, this is a fully functioning Nimble array, right? And as far as a Nimble setup for their storage systems, this is what you'd use. Now, there's the next process is specific to the dHCI installation, and this can get kicked off as a part of the deployment process. But if it does it for one reason or another, all you have to do is go up here. We'll get rid of all that, and we'll start typing stack setup, and you could see that a little bit earlier. So we'll enter that, and it'll bring us to the stack setup process. So we get a little information down here about IGMP snooping, right? Some ways to do that on some common switches that are out there. We're going to click Next. Now I can create a new vCenter server or use an existing vCenter server. So the deployment process, the dHCI deployment process, can deploy the vCenter server for you if you choose. Right? Those bits are set on the storage solution itself or through the deployment process. So you don't need that. I'm going to use an existing server in our environment, and that guy is going to be over here. Right? That'll be this system here. We can log into it real quick if we want to. And you'll see, though, it's a pretty blank vCenter server. There's not much going on over here. All right, so it's just lonely vCenter server. It's just the vCenter server. No clusters, no domain. Now I'm going to grab my vCenter server name. I'm going to go over to the deployment process. So provide your vCenter credentials. So this is the system itself. I'm going to go. And then password. And if you get it correct, once you click away, you'll see that verifying disappears. If you didn't get it correct, there'll be a red label that'll come up over here saying you failed. So we'll read the agreement and we click for, oh, we actually have to open this up and read that all in excruciating detail, but we're going to move forward, but you want to open that up. We'll click next. You can get through. Now we can create a new cluster or use an existing cluster. We're going to create a new cluster. As a matter of fact, we're also going to create a new data center as well, and we're going to call that dHCI underscore data center and dHCI underscore cluster. And we're going to click next again. And we're going to choose the servers that we want to add. I'm going to use these two servers. This third one, we're going to expand our solution with that in the environment. Now, I think something that's nice to note here is HPE allows you to bring existing Gen 9 and Gen 10 systems. So if you had a DL360 Gen 9 or a DL380 Gen 9, you could bring it into this solution as compute power inside this environment. The only thing you need to do with those systems, obviously, you're going to wipe them. You're going to install VMware ESX on them. They would like a certain password, but you can actually add a server with a different password if you wanted to. If you want to make the process easier, you could, through this discovery process, there's a certain password they'd like you to set up. And you'll also need Nimble Connection Manager, and you'll install that to the CLI. So that's not very difficult. It's actually, if you got the IP address on the system from the get-go through a DHCP server, which I'd recommend because all that's going to get changed anyways through this process. But if you got an IP address and it can get out to the internet, there's just something you can cut and paste to be able to deploy Nimble Connection Manager. Will actually pull it from the web install on the system. So it's a very quick process, quick installation of ESX, and then you install Nimble Connection Manager, and then it'll be discoverable in this environment. Obviously, if you order the solution complete, it'll come already pre-configured that way, and you'll be ready to roll. You won't have to do any of that. But it's a nice option to be able to bring in other compute you have in your environment. That's not something you get to do with other hyper-converged solutions that are out there. So we're going to deploy these two systems, and we're going to click next. Now I got to put some IP addresses in here, so we'll start off with 180.101. Notice it takes 180.101 to 180.104 because we've got two servers, we've got 4 IP addresses, so it's 2 per server. So basically, you're going to have a couple IP addresses in this case because of 2 servers for the ESXi management interface for the management kernel, and then you'll have 2 for ILO. Now, newer versions of this deployment software will break out ILO if you want to put that on a separate subnet as well. Just this version does not. And then we need our 2 iSCSI ranges. And notice there's only 1 for each server on this one, and then we need the second subnet for iSCSI range. And that'll be the second subnet. And then finally, we're going to put in our root passwords for ESXi as well as ILO admin passwords. And these are the passwords we are going to change what comes default on ILO is what we've previously set on our ESX host. So this is going to change that to what we'll use in the future. There we go, and then we're going to click Next. Now we're going to get some data stores that are going to get created in this environment. And basically, these data stores are getting created for vSphere HA capabilities. Now, a lot of people stop and say, "Oh, wait a minute! Look at this. We're taking up a terabyte of my storage on this array." And stop and pause. That this is a thinly provisioned. These are thinly provisioned volumes. They have deduplication and compression on them, so if there's nothing on them, they're going to take up no space on the array. This is just a logical space. As a matter of fact, I've had my physical dHCI solution in production for a while, and they take up megabytes of space. They don't take a lot of space at all. We could also add additional data stores on here if we wanted to, but I'm not going to do that right now. We're just going to leave it the way it is, and we're going to click Next. And then we get a summary, and I'm going to click Finish. And then we're going to invoke the set process. And it's going to go through all these steps in order to deploy this in our environment. We'll come back and we'll look and we'll see that this will be deployed in that fashion. All right, we can see the setup was successful inside this environment. We can actually open this up and we can see all the things that were accomplished on our behalf inside this environment. So there's quite a few things that it's done for us. We can see the plugin registering down here. We can see the persist setup information as well as the setup of the storage that exists down here as well. So these are all the things that it's done. Right? We can go up top and we can actually launch the Nimble interface as well. Right? It brings us back into the environment, and we can look under Manage and then Data Storage. Right, and we can see those two volumes that were created. Again, this is their logical size, and this is the actual size they're taken up on the array. So you can see that these guys aren't taking up any space at all within this environment. We could also look under Administration as well as VMware Integration. You could see that our vCenter server was integrated into this environment. Now, you don't have to look in here. I'm just showing you these pieces because really what you're going to do is end up managing this from the vCenter interface, and we can see that our data center was created up here, as well as our cluster. And if I can expand on out, we can see our two ESX hosts in here. So we got little bangs on them. We could select them real quick, and we could see the number of vSphere HA heartbeats. The data store is lost. Another thing that hasn't completed yet is the plugin isn't installed, so you could restart HA over here if you wanted to. We could wait a little bit till the plugin gets installed. Sometimes I find if I log out and log back in, it allows the plugin to kind of come in. There we go. So I'll log back in. Obviously, we get some messages about my vSphere licenses or my demo vSphere licenses, so they're expiring. And we can also see the message about the Nimble plugin, so we'll refresh this. And it'll come up. Again, we'll close that on out. Let's see, it looks like these are still showing up as vSphere, so I don't know, we can go right-click and go down to, this will disappear by itself, but we could do a reconfigure for vSphere HA if we wanted to. And we can right-click on that as well. That'll solve it a little bit quicker if you wanted to. That's up to you. You could also disable and re-enable HA, but again, I didn't need to do that. It's just, I'm just going to do that as a part of this process here. Alright, so you can see that's done. You can see that that has vanished at this time. Right, so that's the deployment process for a dHCI solution. So let's look at the expansion process. You remember I had that other ESX server sitting there. Let's go over the menu. Let's go down to Nimble Storage. Right, here's our group that we created, so I'll select that. And here's the unique view into a dHCI environment. I think we went over that in a previous video, so let's go over and actually look under Inventory and then Servers. And we can see our two servers that are sitting here. So let's go through the process of expanding this with that extra node that I had So we'll click on the plus sign here. It's going to go through the discovery process. Again, we could add a server if we had something specific we wanted to add. All right, here's our ESX host. So I'm going to select that. We're going to click next. And then we get the same context again. So we need to put in some IP addresses. And then we'll do 105 here. And then again, the iSCSI subnets. There we go, wrong. So got that IP address there. You can see it detects if you got something incorrect installed into your environment, like I was just doing. And then again, the new passwords. And then we'll put another one for the ILO. Again, these are the addresses that are going to get changed as a part of this process. We're going to click Add. And we can see down here, it's going to go through that deployment process, and we can see it's been successfully added to the system. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for more videos.